Cloning by Alison Bocek, Amber Bry, Megan Burrows, Megan Rasmussen, and Abby Spawn. To start off, we're going to talk about some of the basics of cloning. So cloning in medical and biological terms is defined as the creation of entities, individuals, and populations that are genetically identical or near identical with the original organism or part of an organism from which they are derived. And then there's two main types of cloning, spontaneous and natural cloning. So asexual reproduction by bacteria in some plants and animals is a way cloning can occur spontaneously. Some examples of animals that use asexual reproduction or spontaneous cloning include Komodo dragons, hydras, and starfish. And then identical twins, also called monozygous twins, are actually the result of natural cloning because two individual genetically identical humans develop from just one single fertilized egg. The first recorded forms of cloning animals took place back in the 19th century with frogs, sea urchins, and salamanders being the experimental subjects. In July of 1996, in Scotland, a sheep that was then named Dolly was the first mammal to be cloned using the genotype of an adult cell. Once news broke out that Dolly was successfully cloned, over 30 countries banned cloning within only a couple years. This turmoil, however, didn't stop scientists from doing cloning experiments on other mammals, and some examples of these mammals include cows, mice, dogs, cats, rats, goats, rabbits, horses, and pigs. Now we're going to talk about some of the proponents of cloning. So the cloning of genes can be used to further investigate the particular type of cell, such as a skin cell, for example, for pharmaceutical research. This process has actually been done for 7 decades already. Cloning embryonic cells can help with organ transplants. Growing organs for transplantation using stem cells decreases the risk of organ rejection, and then it also increases the number of potential available organs. Stem cell therapy can also be used to treat and prevent diseases. And human pluripotent stem cells have the potential to be used in regenerative medicine for brain damage and in spinal cord injuries. And then some proponents that are on a more general and prospective level include the following. So replication of species that are near extinction, propagation of plants and animals, propagation of genes in order to save newborns from certain inherited diseases, discovery of treatments for infertility, replication of embryos, replacement of amputated limbs or replication of destroyed organism, and then two that seem kind of far-fetched at the moment but are deemed possible would be control of population shortages in case of a severe natural disaster, and then decreasing pain and suffering related to death through the possibility of cloning. And then while there are lots of proponents of cloning, there are also several opponents of cloning. So when mammals are cloned, it usually causes the animal some sort of suffering. This could be early death, organ dysfunction, distorted limbs, and gross obesity. The sheep that we talked about earlier, Dolly, she only lived to be 6 due to arthritis and progressive lung disease, which was resulting from the cloning. And then this is an example of internal damages of cloning. Some other opponents include the following. So if cloning humans becomes possible, more cloned people will be in society, and then extinction will become more likely. And then this is because a decrease in genetic variance in the society, because that'll increase the probability of death caused by certain diseases, viruses and pathogens, just because if a virus can affect one person and everybody's genetically identical, it can also impact those other people. And then cloning can also damage beliefs, morals, family establishments, and abilities to recognize and distinguish individuals if everybody is so similar. And then human cloning for the purposes of exceptional characteristics and benefits can set the stage for modern slavery and the exploitation of humans.
So obviously there's going to be some ethical violations of cloning. The first one is going to be non-maleficence. Obviously cloning doesn't guarantee to not do harm on the organisms being used to clone or on the cloned organisms. Just because cloning is definitely an unnatural method of medicine, it's not recommended because it can do harm as they literally create a new organism and it can cause problems for that new organism in their health. Society can suffer and have harm from individuals who look alike and all think the same. Cloning can be harmful for individuals who are considered to have the best characteristics just because they may be cloned or they might be favored over others. And then disease-causing mutant mtDNA actually persists in developing an embryo and may account for eventual diseases in the cloned individuals. Continuing on the ethical violations, now we have beneficence. Cloning violates helping to prevent harm, remove harm, or promote good. Cloned organisms might encounter genetic problems and long-term complications relating to different organs and even just it can destroy the relationship between parent and child that occurs with a naturally born child. If you have all cloned organisms, obviously you aren't going to have that kind of maternal instinct. Nobody is going to have that close bond. Cloning does not prevent harm because it has a low succession rate where the other cloned individuals will not even live. Respect for human dignity is one of them. With autonomy, cloning can result in the loss of autonomy due to individuals who all think and look alike. Cloning stops individuality, which can wreck the formation of relationships that people have with one another, which is the one thing that God says we are made for. And society would be unable to distinguish criminal from the innocent due to identical features. If everyone all looks alike and thinks alike, then obviously we are going to have issues creating a society.
So next, we're going to talk about outcomes for patients with cloning. Human cloning may refer to the therapeutic cloning, and it involves the embryonic stem cells, which would make new organs or can treat damaged nerve cells. Human cloning may also refer to reproductive cloning, which involves the use of somatic cell nuclear transfer, which obtains eggs that could develop into individuals. Therapeutic cloning could be used to make new organs for patients who need them. The ability to make new organs could help many individuals live who would otherwise die waiting on a transplant list. Individuals who could get relief from certain diseases through the use of therapeutic cloning would be really useful and a good intervention. Outcomes for the healthcare system. Therapeutic cloning could lessen the amount of disease present in the current health system today. If more patients could use therapeutic cloning to make new organs or tissues, it would cure their diseases and it would produce less sick patients in our healthcare system. Hospitals would be less crowded and less overwhelmed with diseases because these diseases could be cured and then less hospitalizations could be required. Therapeutic cloning could also be very valuable in the future for curing many diseases. Transplantation lists are long and organ donation can be scarce, and therapeutic cloning could create new organs, and this would shorten the length of the transplant list. Outcomes for healthcare providers. Cloning could be a rewarding intervention due to the possibility of more organ transplants and more diseases being cured. Therapeutic cloning could be a costly treatment option that many insurances wouldn't cover. So that would be kind of like a downside to the outcome for healthcare providers. And then if patients could not afford the therapeutic cloning, then it wouldn't be a viable treatment for them. Therapeutic cloning is still relatively new, and many patients may not be open to the option, even if their healthcare providers would say it would be the best treatment option for them. Just like everything else, therapeutic cloning would have a cost. It's not a concept that has been researched a lot, which means there aren't super specific costs yet for what therapeutic cloning would cost. Traditional cloning is quite expensive and it takes a lot of time. Handmade cloning is more of a simple and cost-effective technique, and it's a simple version of micromanipulator-free version of somatic cell nuclear transfer. It does not require expensive equipment and skilled expertise like traditional cloning does, and it's the most cost-effective option instead of traditional cloning.
Next, we're going to talk about some cultural implications of cloning. So, therapeutic cloning is more likely to be welcomed by the world than the cloning of an entire human being. Therapeutic cloning is more likely to precede the cloning of an entire individual due to its benefits in the organ transplant and gene therapy realms of healthcare. So it would seem to be a less controversial thing to create something that doesn't have a personality and merely a function in the human body, rather than an actual human being with thoughts, emotions, a soul, etc. It also has been expressed by the scientific community that while cloning a person's entire genome could someday be possible, that it wouldn't yield the exact same individual due to the influence a person's environment and experiences throughout their life have on them. For theological and spiritual implications of cloning, a study was performed at a medical school in Brazil, where they interviewed a portion of their students about certain ethical dilemmas in medicine that they might face in future practice. The majority of religions represented were Catholicism and evangelicalism. Almost half of the population reported no concerns with human cloning, which was about 47.3%. Only 4.7% of the students reported religious objections, and 20.3% reported non-religious objections. In Judaism and Buddhism, cloning is considered to be beneficial to creation as long as the motives behind it are pure. And Islam describes cloning as taking away the divine right Allah has to create. Christianity thinks of cloning as humans attempting to do God's job, and that it is a misuse of the creativity He has bestowed upon us.
Lastly, we will discuss the impact on nursing practice. Through the complex process of human cloning, the creation of new physiological and psychosocial conditions will result that will require nursing care. Nursing education will be greatly affected due to the need for incorporating genetics into continuing education programs in clinical practice. The addition of genetics into the nursing curriculum would better prepare nurses for the new challenge that human cloning brings. Educational programs, workshops, and seminars that focus on the implications of cloning for human health will have to be offered for those entering into the healthcare field. Nurses will have to face consequences that cloning has on people's health conditions and outcomes. Not only will nurses have to face the health consequences of human cloning for the patient, but also for their family and society as a whole. To continue, with human cloning comes physical and psychosocial harms for individuals, along with the potential of increased discriminations and inequalities from society. Nurses, therefore, may have to take upon roles that once were not within their scope of practice, such as a protector and advocate role, by demonstrating respect for them as an individual, for their dignity, and for their individuality and worth. Nurses will have to ensure that individuals and the rest of society have been given adequate information about cloning in a way that they can all comprehend entirely. Since nurses will undoubtedly encounter couples or individuals who raise questions about cloning, they will need to play the counseling role. In this role, they will help these people through the decision-making process about cloning and its implications by coordinating and integrating services, while most importantly, supporting them with any decision they choose to make. Medications that are genetically engineered for the process of human cloning will lead to new clusters of side effects and new routes for delivery of the medication. This will impact the nursing process because it will require nurses to update their knowledge of genetics and also learn the fundamentals of recombinant technology. Nurses are faced with the dilemma of deciphering what their morals and ethical beliefs are. while also having those beliefs challenged by these rapidly changing discoveries with genetic engineering. Nurses must move forward as science is evolving and yet be very attentive to what people need from nursing. And here is our reference list. Thank you for watching our presentation.